Yep, welcome again. This is the session number 3, and today we will try to close demos and our understanding on the part 1 and 2 together. So nothing should be left in that. Part 3 is, as I have been saying, that is the crux of the project where whatever we built in part 1 and 2 will come together. That's where you will see that why we built part 1 and 2 and how do we secure it, because I have seen on the WhatsApp groups you guys are able to achieve this. So what I was thinking to highlight the fact that learning basic of DevOps and cloud is very easy. You can run your app even now on a specific port or something use from the container that you have built, but that is not the way it will be used, right? So in the industry or in the actual projects in your companies, that's not how it will be deployed. There will be a lot of security areas, a lot of scalability opportunities that you will set up. So let's go through this demo today. Let's finish off part 2 today, and then we move on to the part 3. So how do we proceed? And while we will have the demos, let's understand what the person has built. You just give us a background as to what you were trying to solve, and then we will make some suggestions by our experience how different you could have done, or because getting the output is not the objective. Output is possible through shortcuts or through easy ways. Is the right approach or the right approach has been followed or not? That is the main crux. That's why we are all assembled and trying to resolve this. So if you have some suggestions, just pour that in, just mention that. And something wrong with your mic. I can't hear you. Is it a one-to-one message or it's in the group? I don't know, but yeah, I can't hear you. But let's proceed. Who I think Shruti had a demo, and I think Karthik had as well. So let's proceed. And if you can raise your hand, then I can then take that order, like within which order we go. So Shruti, let's start with your demo. I published one of yours, and people are just you see number of views they got and how many times they are watching it. So it's amazing. Because
Yeah, thank
presentation
you.
skills are equally important. Skills are when you go talk about your project, when you will be talking about this project in your interviews or that sort of thing, then your experience will be reflecting that you have actually spent time on this. So that is also equally important. So try to speak as much as possible.
Yeah, sure, Sanjay. So today also I will be explaining by means of a presentation, and at last I would like to discuss one or two errors which I faced while executing this project. So yeah, let's start.
Yep. If all of you, if all you have cameras, then please have your cameras on. It will be helpful in connecting and maybe remembering also people. If you,
I think my screen is visible. Yeah.
yep, it's visible. Let's get started.
Yeah. So in phase two, the task is to build and containerize an application. So for that, we will be needing a GitLab repo with the pet clinic source code. And as we were planning to scan our code, so for that we need a Sonar Cloud account and a Jenkins server, which is provisioned with Maven, because we will be using Maven as a build tool. And after that, we will be building the pet clinic images, Docker images. For that, we will be needing the Docker application and the Docker Hub account. So, and coming to the fifth point, which is JFrog Artifactory account, which is completely optional because we were provided with the option to uh, store our jar files in Artifactory. So I tried to explore that tool as well, like how to create repositories and how to store the files. So coming to the implementation,
There is a bit
we
of
will be
Shruti. Sorry, there is a bit of disturbance. I think it's from your mic or something. I don't
Um,
know. Is it
mm, now, now it is there or
now? It's much better. Yeah. Maybe I'll mute
okay.
everyone else and see if it was yours
Mm,
or somebody else. So I'm muting everyone. Let's proceed.
yeah, sorry. So coming to the implementation, as I said that I
Your
used
screen share is
GitLab.
gone, so your screen share is lost. So if you can
Uh,
bring it again.
yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I think now it is fine.
Yes.
Yeah. So in GitLab, I have the pet clinic source code. And as we were intended to scan the code, so the code scan will be done through the Sonar Cloud. And for that, we need to integrate this GitLab with the Sonar Cloud and Jenkins as well, because the Jenkins pipeline will be fetching the code and it will be scanning. So for that, we need to integrate Jenkins as well, and we will be using Maven as the build tool to build the application. And from then, we will use the Docker to create the images, Docker images, and we will containerize the application and we'll store it in the Docker Hub. And as I said, Artifactory, we can store the jar files. So we have to integrate the Sonar Cloud with GitLab. We need to create an organization, and in that organization, we have to provide the GitLab group key. Actually, in GitLab, every project is associated with a group, and that group will have an unique ID, group ID, that we have to provide it here. And again, for personal access token, like all other applications we did in past as well, there will be an access token to provide the authorization or to authentication to access the application. For that, we need to do that. And as we have to analyze our code, we have to define the analysis method which we are following. And in that, we will be getting one Sonar token and environment value, which we will give it in Jenkins credentials section so that pipeline can access it. And also, we have to do modifications to the pom.xml file, which is available to us in the source code. So in that, we will just define the organization name. In my case, it is Shruti, and the Sonar Cloud ID, so that it helps in kind of integration. And we have to specify this command to perform the scan in our Jenkins file. I am explaining this because I was missing few things, and I spent around 2 to 4 hours in this step. So I thought it will help to our fellow learners also. So I am explaining this thing. And
Right.
then coming
So
to
so just to
Artifactory.
check, Shruti, your source code
Yeah.
is in GitLab, but you are using
Yes.
Jenkins for your CI/CD.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
You can also
And
use GitLab now since you have created and you have spent some time. Try to create the same Jenkins file in GitLab also, just
I'm
so
using
that.
GitLab for now. I used GitLab only, Sanjay.
But where is Jenkins fitting in then?
The GitLab will have the source code, and the Jenkins is being used to run the entire pipeline.
Pipeline, right? So I'm saying
Yeah,
build, you can also next stage, you can also try building the pipeline in GitLab. So
GitLab.
your
Okay,
Jenkins is out of picture. So you can try that because you have done most of
okay,
your work, right? Your repository is there. So
yeah,
it will be less effort for you. And you will have that
okay,
additional GitLab added to your credentials, right?
okay. Sure, sure.
Try that.
Yeah, and if we are done with this, the Sonar Cloud part for scanning the repository is done. And similarly for Artifactory, I have created a generic repo. I have created generic repo because in that we can store the files of different formats. It is a generic one. And in that also we can create an authentication token and we can integrate with Jenkins pipeline. So as we were using the build tool as Maven, we have to specify the version and we can select instant install automatically, and we can use Maven as a build tool. So coming to the demo part, see, this is my Jenkins file. In this, as I told, I'm using the Sonar token for authentication to the Sonar cloud, Docker token for the Docker hub, as I will be storing the images in the Docker hub. And happen in stage 2, we are building the Maven package. In stage 3, we are building the Docker image. To build the Docker image, we need to have a Docker file which specifies the instructions to create the image, right? So for that, I am having a Docker file. In that, I'm copying the jar file along with its dependencies to the home directory of the container, which will be created. And here I'm exposing the port, and here I'm using the entry point to create the container. So this is the one for the creation of the Docker image. So once the Docker image is created, it will get stored in the artifact Docker hub, for which I will be authenticating using the secrets, and then I'll push it into the repository. So in order to save some time, I just ran the build before starting the presentation, and we can see that the build is successful and the image has been pushed to the Docker hub.
Cool.
So here.
Can we see your GitHub repository or GitLab repository structure? Some
Yeah.
how many
Yeah.
branches you are using, and
I have used a single branch, and for phase 2, as you suggested in the previous video, I created the new project, Sanjeev. And
yeah.
here, one more thing I would like to address is like initially I was trying with GitHub, and I was trying
Mhm.
to integrate, which I'll discuss in the errors section. The issues which I faced, I'll discuss there.
Okay, so
And mm,
GitLab, maybe there might be some integration issue that can
yeah,
be resolved,
yeah,
but one of
yeah,
the requirement was that we should be building in different branches. So one of the
mm,
ask was that on every branch you should be building. So it's just to get you in some mindset change that main is the branch which we will be updating to. So I just hope you guys understand, right? The main is usually a very protected branch, and you will be releasing from that, or you will be using that to uh, fork out stable releases, right?
yeah,
uh, you would be creating your specific feature branch that you are adding a Docker file. So that's a feature you are adding to the repository. You will create a branch, and then your build
mm,
pipeline will start from within that branch also. So just
mm,
get used to that sort of thing. And your main branch, in whether it's GitLab or GitHub, you can protect that. So direct check-in or direct commit to main branch are usually not allowed in the organizations. They will restrict that,
okay,
and
okay,
they would only way to put your code in main branch would be through a pull request. So you will create a feature branch, work on it, prove that your CI/CD pipeline is stable for your branch, and then you will create a pull request. Then whoever is your reviewer of the pull request will look at the output of your pipeline in your branch. Based on that, and based on his thought process that your code is accurate and as per your company standard, then they will approve, and then it will merge with the main. So again, try
okay,
to do that as well in your, you don't have to come and present this again, but just so that you know that how it works. And in case you have to explain it in your interviews, then go with this approach that
branches.
that in your company you are following a Git flow kind of arrangement where you will be creating feature branches for every issue or every ticket that you are working on, every small request, and you will be enhancing the source code, creating a pull request, get it merged in master or main.
Sure.
So that's all.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. Sanjeev, I would like to add one thing here. So basically, the branching strategy, what you're talking is, it's a completely a different ball game. People are just working here. I mean, I've also been seeing we are directly merging everything in the, we are working directly from the main branch. That is not correct at all, because we need to create an integration branch along with the main branch. From the integration branch, we create the feature branches. Whenever we are pushing, we will only push it to the feature branch in the remote repository. Once it is pushed, they will create the merge request. Only once the merge request is accepted, it will go to the integration branch. Then certain tests are done, like the integration test and the functional test. Then it will be moved to the main. Basically, main branch is completely locked. It is just used to store the final releases. That's where we need to understand the whole branching strategy.
Correct. So at least get some idea of Git flow, which is what Dinesh explained, and we just have to follow that sort of thing. If any branching related questions come, this is probably followed in 95% of the companies. Some may follow different strategies. Usually, if you explain one, people will agree that okay, you understand the difference, and you can probably understand their process easily. So just and best ways that you do that in your project. So just practice
Yes,
that as well.
and as soon as we are pushing the code to the remote repository, the unit test and the smoke test needs to be done from our end. And only once it is done, the QA team will do the functional test and the integration test. So I think we need to create the branches and protect the branches. As you said, we have a section here in the GitLab. We need to protect the particular branches.
Correct.
Yes, that's good. Yeah. Please go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Shruti. It's nice.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, so here I have updated the Docker image, and I'll just pull that Docker image and I'll show you.
So you are using Docker Hub as a container registry, or you using JFrog, because you highlighted JFrog as
No,
well.
uh, in JFrog, I stored the only jar file, Sanjeev. I just
Okay.
explored it, like how to do.
Okay.
So first in Docker Hub, I did.
Right. So
So
there is an option of Docker repository also in JFrog. So instead of doing a
JFrog,
generic repository, you can create a Docker and then authenticate using the credentials and I think token
yeah,
based authentication,
yes,
and you can use it just like uh, the same thing,
Docker.
Docker Hub.
Yeah. So this is the repository. Sorry, this is the Docker image with the tag I have pushed. So I'll um, yeah, it is showing that application has started. And as I'm hosting it on local, so it will be the IP address of the. So this is
Awesome.
the one.
Yep. So is it
And
using now RDS or is it using the
no,
inbuilt?
it's not inbuilt one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And here we can check in sample output. They gave few details of the owner's last name details. We can check if
Okay.
it is coming or not. It's coming, and we can add ours also. Like, say for example, we can add it. I'm giving just random thing.
Yep. All good. Fine. So
Like,
next stage, you have 2, 3 actions. The two that we discussed
yeah,
already, creating
branching
some
one.
branches. And I think it will
Yeah,
be applicable for everyone. Most of you would have used the main branch, but that's not the actual finished expectation. When you finish, you leave your main branch protected. If your tool does not support protection or anything, you just make sure that you are not committing to master and using that, and maybe explore GitLab as well for your CI process as well, just so that you can add GitLab
yeah.
CI/CD also to your resume, and apart from like not for using source code alone.
Okay.
You can take the
Yeah.
same Jenkins file, convert that into GitLab YAML file, and
Okay.
minor changes, you should be good to go. And you will understand that how you can convert your Jenkins pipeline to GitLab. And in future, if some question is there around, have you used Azure DevOps? You can mention that you use two
Okay.
such tools, and Azure DevOps. Uh, Even GitHub Actions are slightly different, but not very different from these pipeline structure. So they are all infra as code, pipeline as code. They work in the same way. So once you convert Jenkins file to GitLab YAML, you will understand you can manage to work with different tools, and you can add all those tools to your resume. If there are any questions, you can explain that how you can write. Usually they have their starting Docker image from where you will start, just like which container you will use for building your project, and uh, then those stages of like you will have build, test, deploy, those stages in that, just like your
Mm,
Jenkins file.
sure. Thank you.
And then RDS
And
has to be changed.
yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Sandeep, that's all. And the errors which I faced were like initially for launching the Jenkins instance, I was using the Jenkins image, Docker image, and I was trying to host on that. So in that, the by default Java version which comes is JDK 11, and the version which I was using to build the pipeline was JDK 17. So I
Okay.
was getting this error, and also while executing the Docker commands, a few of the libraries were missing. So I completely have to change the entire setup, and I have to install everything on my local, and I have to do. So these were the two issues. And another one was like initially I was trying to integrate Jenkins and Sonar Cloud and GitHub. So I think I did everything like access tokens, mentioning the project keys, everything, but still I was getting this error. So I spent around 2 days on this, and then I shifted back to GitLab, and integration, everything was fine, and the output and all, everything was good. Yeah, this, if anyone finds solution for this, it will be nice if they can share. Yeah, Sanjit, that's all from my end, Sanjit. Mm.
Cool. So you have few actions, but work on them,
Yes.
and then we will talk
Yeah.
about the part three later on.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Who's going next? Thanks, Shruti. Who's going next? Karthik.
Sanjeev, I can go. Yeah.
Yep. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So I have used when previously GitHub, and for this demo also I'm using GitHub as my
Mhm.
repo. Used I've integrated mostly on only on the main
We can't
branch,
see your
not the
screen.
feature.
We can't see your
Okay, sorry.
screen if you're.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Hope you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is
Just
my
increase the font, Karthik, a little bit font. If you can increase the size, then we can. Yeah, much better now for everyone.
yeah.
Yep.
So this is my pet clinic repo, and what I have done is my first, part one and part two are completely in two different repositories, and have not, built both of them together. If we run, and the second part will only run, and this is my GitHub repo, wherein so I have used Java from JDK 20, and have used a sneak integration tool here before that. And after that, it used a sneak filter to filter all the vulnerabilities. Later, it will build an artifact with this command. And after that, it will test with JUnit tests and other tests it will run. late in the next step, I've used Sonar Cube analysis. We have a couple of methods to do. One method is to integrate it with the application properties, the sonar.io, where we can mention there. I've used this method to get this working.
Yep.
Yeah. And also why I have used a dcheck style is because specifically I was getting a sync. Specifically, I used a sync as to scan the repo, right? It uses, it only checks for HTTPS in the application property. It checks for HTTPS. In order to fix that, we need to either remove that skip. We can remove that HTTPS file, or where we can give additional argument like a dcheck style happens. Skip this command, because of which I have used this one in order to it will work only also with HTTP.
Okay. Is it not possible, Karthik, to have this? There is a secret token and project key,
Yes,
and
it
that
is
can go
possible.
somewhere, right? Like
Yeah. Actually, I didn't get. I was on a trip, so I couldn't get much time. I will get this fixed up.
Right.
And
No
also,
worries.
I've been using RDS. I'm not using RDS at this moment. I'm using inbuilt MySQL thing, repo. Sorry, database.
Yep. No worries.
So
If you are not using RDS,
yeah,
then the future solution that we are developing, you if you get any error in that solution in the phase 3, you may not get the real issues. You will think that it's not working because of some other reason or not working because of any issue. So just sort that out in
yes,
advance.
I will do that. I will do that. But today morning only I've reached back. When
Yeah.
I'm back home, so I couldn't get much time. And then in the next step, it will create a Docker image and using the credentials and that URL. And also here also I've faced issues also in the using all this thing. I will tell that after this. And here using this command, I'm building that image. And later I'm tagging that and I'm pushing that image to that. And also I'm running this image in my local system and exposing the port 8080 to run it.
Okay. But
So,
that's
and also
again,
coming to the
that step is fine, but we will, that's not the intention eventually. Intention of this pipeline is to push the image, and we can deploy and test it as well. But you understand in the phase 3, it will be deployed differently.
Yeah. And also I've tried, thought of doing with Artifactory also, but I will get that thing working up. After, I will push that also in Docker Hub and in JFrog Artifactory also. I will try that.
No worries. Let's
And
take a look at your Sneak integration, how that works, and
yeah.
we can get any idea from there.
Yes. So I will just run the build now. Okay, and I can, so that I and also will explain here a bit. So I've used all the unit tests and Sneak integration and everything. I got like this. All the build artifacts like a Sneak report and POM jar file and everything I've got here. I've got a code Jacob code summary, like how and the code coverage also.
Yep.
So these are the test results here for the Jacob and
make sure you understand
and
this report, right? The
yes.
percentage coverage and number of lines covered, number of functions covered, all that. Not
Yes,
number.
Code coverage, I think it's mostly used, right? How much the code has been scanned and everything.
And where would you
So
use that information if you have to use that? If it is 50% coverage, then these tools will support your pipeline to break if the amount of coverage is not sufficient. So those become slightly complex, but just get an idea that they quality gates, and you can configure that if your number of JUnit test, if 95% of your JUnit tests are not passing, you will not even though your project is built successfully, but you will say it's not built successfully. You will fail that build.
Hmm.
Same for your code coverage. If your code coverage is not 95 or usually not that high, but 80%, then you would probably not accept that build. So
Yeah.
those sort of quality gates you can configure as well in a slightly complex sort of pipeline.
Okay. So so that I can see all that vulnerabilities here itself.
Mhm.
I've
Okay,
got
Sneak
like
has a
more.
Jenkins plugin, is it?
Yes, yes.
Remote
We
work.
have a
We saw this
Jenkins.
last week, right? We saw this last week. RCE and other issues were found
Yes,
in the source code. Yeah.
yes. So these were the issues. I mean, from using that Snake, and coming back to the issues which I have faced after using Snake is like, see, first of all, I'm scanning the entire repo with the Snake. Later, I'm getting multiple issues. Like if even if we use, I mean, by default we use MySQL, DB, and PostgreSQL, and all the tests will run using HTTP. And after using Snake, it only the build will only pass only if it has met all those requirements which are there in that exploitable CVSS 9. I mean, like the vulnerability, the level should be 9 or something like that. Wherein I'll show you that.
Otherwise, it will fail that build, right? That will reject that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, it will fail that.
So again, same concept, right? If your by default Sneak finds any security issue like the one we saw, it will fail the build. But there are ways, there are additional parameters you can pass. I think
Yes.
hyphen fail only if it is critical or something like that. There are additional
Yes.
parameters, so it will bypass your uh, less severity issues.
Yes, because of which I had to use a decheck style skip because it will check. I mean, it won't check the check style like HTTP like that.
Okay.
To in order to resolve that, what we can do? Wait, sorry, here. So here we got no HTTP check. We have to change that.
Okay.
So what I
That's
did,
fine. Our
check it
application will
again.
anyway be running without HTTPS. This is running on
Yes,
8080 and we will not have any security on that node itself.
yes,
What we will have in our final solution is through maybe Route 53, or we will be hitting the load balancer where we will have a certificate.
yes, yes. Then it will pass. I mean, we need to
Yeah.
no need to use skip style, and we no need to change all that.
I think it
So
will still be required. It will still be required because your application running on your EC2 in the final solution will not have certificate on the node itself. It will
okay,
be on the on the load balancer. We will have certificate. The certificate will be offloaded, and then HTTP traffic will come to your from load balancer to your EC2 will not be secure.
okay.
So it's a good arrangement you have made. So it's fine.
Yeah. And so these are the coverage reports and everything. And after seeing the build console output, I mean, the build passed, I mean, completed successfully, and it has run on a port 8080.
Awesome.
And also I will show you.
You were also deploying this also, right? Somewhere.
Yeah, in my local system itself, I was doing that. And where we can get this, I mean, so where we got here, I mean, the link of sonarcloud.io in that
Mhm.
build console, where we can see findings
Yep.
and code coverage. Here I've got 92.1 coverage.
Yep. Good. Good. All good. I think same feedback. Some of the look at your branching stuff. Look at if you can use any JFrog or some other repository. And yeah, you have done
Yes.
quite good effort, quite a good job there. Yeah.
And here we got the clinic and 3 minutes back.
Yeah, awesome. This is a Docker image, right?
Yeah, this is a Docker image. These are the things which I've done.
Anybody wants to add
Thank you,
something?
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. So we'll move on then. Thanks, Karthik. And if you saw I forgot that in your GitHub repository, it was mentioned that your main is not protected, which means you can commit
Yes.
to your main. So we have to protect
Yes.
that.
Yeah. And also the pull request when we need to build only on the branches, we also get the other person to check that in the corporation, in the organization. Another person will check, as you said, will check the repo, and then both of them, I mean, we can mention like how many persons need to evaluate that,
Yes.
1 or 2 persons to approve that request, and then only we
Correct.
can able to merge with that.
Correct. And that person who is reviewing, right, he will not have a lot of time, so he will be busy in his day-to-day activities as well. So usually
Yeah.
reviews are like on best effort basis. So he will look at your sneak report, he will look at your Jokoko report and all the unit tests and Docker image being built. All that he will look at it and then apply his thought that coding standards are followed, and then he will approve it. That sort of thing. So these tools will help him to work faster and effectively.
Yeah. And also like previously, I mean, Shruti also mentioned like this application needed JDK, I mean, 17, JDK 17. Even I also got JDK 11, faced a much issue with that. And my system got down and crashed and have tried everything. And later I've figured that out and reinstalled Jenkins and everything. Then it worked out.
Okay. Is it not mentioned in the README of the
It has mentioned, I think so.
first line? It says it should work with Java
Yes,
17
yes.
or lower. So
Yes,
that
yes.
is there. Yeah. So what I
Generally,
mentioned in the first session was like usually your developers will give you that sort of requirements that okay, you need J. In this case, you need Java. But suppose in this project, the developers were using some third-party library to draw a graph or plot some graph or images or something like that. Then those have to be pulled in as well, right? So all those dependencies have to be brought in, that sort of thing.
yes.
In
And
this
also,
case,
I mean,
because we are not having any developer connect, we will be reading the README file 2-3 times, understand what the project requires, and then we make our
yes,
application pipelines.
yes. And also in the document, if you can see my screen, I have in my Docker file, I've used JDK 17 version and then move that file and folder in of that pet clinic to run that image.
And you can also use
So
the Alpine version for the JDK Java, because Alpine version is the very lightest version. So your Docker file, your image will be very less in size. It's very useful.
yeah. And generally, what people will think is, you see, in the Linux side of things, if you install, if you want to, people want to install Jenkins, they use a yum install or APK install Jenkins. That single command, and it will install automatically. What people will think, since it is the latest version of Jenkins, it might support JDK 17. People will think like that generally, since it is the
Okay.
latest one. But
Right.
the libraries, I mean, beyond that, it will use GDK 11, and that we need to install latest version of Java and configure that and make sure, Jenkins sees that.
Right. We have to ensure. Usually, what happens is that these versions and these sort of things get documented in the company. So you know that if it ran yesterday, it will probably be running the same sort of setup, will take the same base image, and then it's very standardized process because you are doing it, all of you are doing like one time. Uh, you are struggling with some version mismatch and that sort of thing. But once it is stable, then the developers will be working on the code. They will be using the same JDK version, and it will just keep on working until they make some bigger change.
Yeah.
All right. So who's next? And uh, I think Sheen, you back. You were struggling with your mic or something.
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't know if I could top any of those presentations.
Yeah, you can go ahead. If you can share your screen, you can go ahead and explain. You are the first to achieve in the entire group. Uh,
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, judging from the display name, I'm probably the dumbest guy here, but I'll go ahead. Hold on. Uh, screen window, entire window, entire screen, entire screen. Okay, screen one. There you go. Okay, so I'd just like to share this. Let me know if you can see the screen.
we can, yeah.
Oh, okay. So for those who are students that are following our challenge, that are encountering issues with Jenkins running on a Linux, I did create a script here that would help us set up everything that we need in one go. It's just this link over here. I'll paste it on our chat. But ultimately, you just need a Docker file and the script file, and it will try to detect if I just need the operating system to be Ubuntu 2004, and it will install the Docker as well as the custom Jenkins and every tools that we need to on the Jenkins. So it will do the AWS Packer Docker Compose in there. It will take around like 5 minutes. That's not related to the exercise though, but just in case if you some of you will try to set that up. Okay, so like Shruti, I am using GitLab just for my repo. I didn't know that we could do the CI in here, and I don't know how to integrate it with code so that we can edit that. But I'm gonna explore that later on. But for now, the Git that I have, the repo that I have is is hosted in GitLab, and let me just pull this over here. Oh, no, that's not the right thing. Hold on. Oh, there you go. So part one. So part two. Okay, part two. So just like Dinesh and Sanjeev said earlier, I did develop my pipelines in branches, but the only time that I merge my current branch to my main is when I know that the entire pipeline was building, and you can see here on whoa, what's going on here? On the pipe, the the main is failing. So you can see here that there's two branches here for the test where I developed the code, and then by the time that I'm ready to merge, I merge the code to main. And so if you check my Git, you'll see that the live part two and main are aligned. Once those are built, these are the stages that it goes through. If you compare that to part one as well, those are very different because the part one is at a different branch, and part two we have everything in part one and everything else that we worked on part two. So like every other student, I got the repo Sonar Cloud to work. I'm not really sure at this point how this integrates to our work, but as far as I can tell, this is like code quality and vulnerability check for the code. And
Yeah.
fortunately for me, it did not fail for me. And I was trying to put some bad code in there, and it just won't fail. I'm not sure how to simulate that, but ultimately that has been accomplished. for that stage. And for the Maven compile, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm not really good with Java, and I don't know what the difference is for clean, complete, and package. But if I remove these two, this package would fail. Uh, as far as I can tell, these are goals that Maven is trying to accomplish. But I need to read that about that more, so on why these are succeeding if they're in there. But ultimately, what's happening here is when I package uh, the build the artifact, is I use the profile MySQL because earlier Sanjeev wanted us to use the RDS, and I want the test to align to that requirement as well, so that the test with the automated test run, it aligns to the production requirement, which is SQL. Now, with building the Docker, you'll notice here that I'm using my own repository because as I ran out of the space on DigitalOcean, which is my Docker where I put my Docker my container registry. In the real world, you'll never do this because this is just HTTP. And to get around that, I have to configure the insecure registries on Docker client. And that is, yeah, you'd never use that in the real world, so don't try. This is just for good. Ultimately, this is this file is pushed into the AMI when it is built. Um, so this is put on this path on AMI. So I added that as a requirement, my very specific requirement, so that when I do run the container on the EC2 instance, that file exists and it will able to query the insecure registries on the on my repository. Yeah, on my container repository. So you'll see here that it's very straightforward. Once it builds the container, it will get the artifact file that was created on Maven package. And in addition to that, I also added the MySQL URL variable because so that we can change it at some point in the future if if we can. The good thing here is once we set up the MySQL URL environment variable, when we build that in Docker Compose, we can just change that value. So when we are required to use, like what Sanjit said, RDS, we can just update our Docker Compose with that variable. We'll put it somewhere here, something like this, and then we put in the value that we have, so that we don't have to rebuild the container. Right now, the Docker Compose is just like that, but after the and this is the entry point, the CMD line that is executed. You'll also see here that it is using MySQL profile, so that the application itself will use the MySQL driver when it try to query the database. Um, there's nothing real much here than this is using a local MySQL versus RDS. And the reason for that is if I leave the RDS up and running, it'll charge me $15 a day, $15 a month, and I already ran out my $100 for the month, and I know that's for a year, but every month, but yeah, for the entire month I already ran out, so I just switched back to MySQL. The important thing here is it's just a parameter. We just change this based on the host name of the RDS, and we're good to go. Now,
Yep.
there's a additional step here that I did add, but apparently I was told that this is not a good practice. So deploy EC2 instance. I just thought that it would be nice that we could use the AMI that we created on the first part. So I created a script to call the script EC2 instance, which is this one right here. What it does is it will create the AWS objects required for us to be able to provision the EC2 from that AMI instance. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. Some part here are from
So,
ChatGPT because this
so yeah,
part right here. Yes,
so
sir.
this is a
Go
good
ahead.
attempt to deploy your container onto an EC2 instance, but we will not be using this in the part 3. That's where
Right.
we will differentiate slightly.
Correct.
So yeah.
Yeah. Um.
But it's
I'm
good that you
currently
got it done. You got it done because it proves that you can run it on a EC2 instance of the AMI
yeah,
that you built in the phase one. So
correct
it helps you tick some boxes
testing.
that yes, it works on RDS, it works on that AMI. Now let me
Right,
focus on getting the subnets
right.
and security in place.
Right, right. And just for those who are implementing the Docker Compose like I did, one of the issues that you will encounter is when they try to communicate with each other, because they will communicate by name. And you might think that the name is just this service name, but actually when you build the Docker Compose, it will append some project name and then the service name. So in this case, it would be part2 minus pet clinic, and that will mess up your code because it doesn't know who pet clinic is. Instead, it uses that name that Docker created, Docker Compose created. So that's why we have this additional parameter here so that we can fixate the container name as well as the MySQL. And you'll notice that MySQL here matches the host name that we specify on the Docker. Now, if you go back here, that the Docker is just the environment name, in the future, if in part two we need to change that variable, we can just update the compose and then add the environment here, and then add that value for the URL, and then we should be good to go to be able to use that RDS. Now, back on the pipeline, once that's created, you will see that the output did spit out an IP address. I was told, I think it was Sanjeev who mentioned here that the managing the key, the private key, is not a good idea, and I didn't know that. Well, and anyway, so it is good though that exploration thing. But so but after the pipeline, we should be able to see the application run. Oh, there you go, running here that it is indeed deployed on that EC instance without any intervention from us. So ultimately, I guess what I can get from this project, from this exercise, is we're just really trying to automate ourselves out of a job so that we can move on to the next one. I guess that's the spirit of DevOps. But it's nice though, because I know that Dinesh here, like what he said earlier, and Sanjeev really gives us insight on what's happening in the real world with DevOps, because I'm basically new to DevOps, and I'm trying to yeah, get those
That is the
real
whole
world
idea.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. So people will not have that much experience, and it's very difficult, right? It's so many tools, technologies, and processes followed. So what we try to do is help you build that story that you can justify your few months of experience that you have actually worked on a actual specific project or a company with that mindset. So when you are explaining these projects, you look professional, not like a hello world project or not like a basic project. That is, and then a lot of people add value by their experience.
I am quite interested though on how exactly the branches are supposed to be treated. Like Dinesh, what you said and Dinesh earlier. I was wondering if what I did here was actually near that, about only aligning the main branch when you're ready to
Yes,
when you
yes,
clean up
yes.
the. Oh, okay.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes. So
Awesome.
that's what Shruti and others like you were demonstrating, right? Your pipeline will have then two or three different, like if you have a dev feature pipeline, then you will see that Jenkins process will build that specific branch. Dinesh mentioned of integration or some other type of pipeline branches. So you will have then after that you create a pull request to your integration branch, then that will generate a new artifact. And then once you have a pull request in your main, then that will generate a third one. So once everything is passed, everything should usually look green. And if it is
Oh, okay.
broken or something, that means it needs attention of the team. So then they will look into it. So I think this is good. Although it sets up for the next stage. It basically for everyone else, like he has created very nicely parameterized Docker image. So now you can pass the URL or the wherever your host, your RDS is hosted. So it could be your local host, it could be in the cloud or anywhere else. So you can pass that parameter, and that this will help us when we create the part 3, because at that time we would not know the where the RDS is going to be hosted. That would be a dynamic URL. So we will just pass that URL there.
Ah, awesome.
All right. Who's next? And is it any different from what we have seen? Anyone really wants to present, or they want to go, then they can go ahead. Otherwise, we'll discuss about the stage 3 of the project. All right. No one else. So this is pretty much right. Phase 1 and phase 2. If you have not completed this, try to finish that in next 1 or 2 days at the max, because if we have not started phase 3 by now, we are slightly behind schedule. So we will not be able to finish that, because that is that's the most complex part, as well as the most value adding part to the overall project. So right now we have already seen the application. So it's running on either port 8080 or not run very securely. So we will manage that part. Uh, right now it's running on uh, not using any load balancer or any such constructs. We will, fix that as well in the phase 3. Right now, wherever the application is running, you are able to SSH onto that server. You had a key created to the instance. So just wanted to add on that key part. In companies where they are using such mechanism, they are using SSH keys. Uh, in those companies, they will not create new key for every EC2 instance. So they will store their keys in such a way that in AWS, for example, they have created a key. It will be a common shared key that every EC2 instance being created in that account uh, will follow the same key. So, for example, you will use an existing key so that everybody will already have that key added to their command line, and they will be able to SSH as well. So that is very risky, and everybody is sharing the same key. It's not the ideal way. And if that gets exposed, your entire AWS, or Azure or any other platform, right? Then everything will be exposed. So again, in the phase 3, we are fixing that process. We will not be exposing our EC2 instances on port 22. That means no SSH key will be there. No, we will create the EC2 instance without an SSH key and still be able to connect to it. That's where you guys have to research. I have already given you the pointers in the PDF file or in the recording that in the video that I shared. So that there are two different options offered by these cloud providers. We will use the SSM one, where you can talk to your EC2 instance without having to open the port 22. So a lot of things are going to be fixed in the next phase, and a lot of new features will be added, where it will make the same working solution, which is working by end of phase 2, will be much more secure, highly resilient. If we reach to that level, you will see that we will terminate one of the instance, and automatically a new instance will be created by AWS, and it will automatically happen. We will not have to do any intervention. It will create a new EC2 instance using the AMI created in phase 3. It will download the Docker image. It will start the Docker image, and within few seconds, you will have the instance running, your application back running again. So that is the objective of making a self-healing application. So if something goes wrong on your EC2, your application will come back by itself. So that is the intention with all security and all. So if you have not done phase 1 and phase 2 by now, maximum spend some time in the next 1 or 2 days, reach to that level. Otherwise, you will fall behind in the overall schedule. Any questions before we close, or take any other questions which is beyond this project or anything else?
I think we are good, Sanjay.
Yeah. So people who have completed, just fix basic stuff that we discussed and move on to the phase 3, where we will start creating infrastructure. The infrastructure is, in some cases, can be expensive. So make sure you are terminating your stuff when you are finished your development. So follow Terraform destroy at the end of your process. When you are done for the day, you studied or worked for 2 hours, destroy everything and recreate the next day. It takes 2-3 minutes to get up and running. Don't leave it running, otherwise it could be costly. But do create these resources, even if it costs, say, some amount. Create them. By creating them, you will discover a lot of things. Theoretically, you will understand, that, okay, a load balancer is to route some traffic. So a load balancer in front does not make so much of value add. But once you start creating those resources, that's when you will realize the actual benefit, how different other resources have to be created, target groups, listeners, those sort of things, and how things integrate together. Where do you specify your certificate to be used in the load balancer? That sort of thing. What is a certificate and all that? So you will get to know a lot when you start creating them. Theoretically, things seems very simple, that yes, there would be public private subnets and all that sort of thing. But once you start building that, you will understand the real challenge. And when you are explaining those challenges in the interviews or in your day-to-day job, that is when the actual value will come. They will realize that this person has actually worked on it, or he just, at 10,000 feet has a very high level understanding of the concepts. So we want to bring that differentiation. All right. So that's it for the project part of it. Um, any other questions? Like, now I expect that you guys will go and work on the phase 3 of the project. The group is open for any discussions. If you miss out any question in this session, you can always post it in the channel, in the WhatsApp group. We'll try to resolve there. You have any questions or any clarifications to be taken, you can ask in the chat, and we'll try to resolve there. But if there is anything else, because we are meeting, and if you are struggling with something else, uh, anything else you want to talk or ask, we can talk about it. Any other people are there, experienced people, so they can add value. If somebody wanted to ask anything or discuss on any such area, we can discuss that as well.
I have one question, Sanjay. Like,
Yeah.
while preparing for interviews and all, generally the questions will come related to the real world scenarios, like handling the real world examples. But
Mhm.
as we don't have experience on the real world, is there any place or any site where we can get this kind of knowledge, like a real
So
world scenario
this
concepts?
group, this project we are doing is for exactly the same
Yeah,
purpose. So
yeah,
you won't believe this is what I'm bringing in. This thing is an actual project,
yeah.
just that the
Yeah.
containers are different. This is exactly, we are in one of the company, we have deployed our applications in this infrastructure. Only difference is that the containers were like, it was not a single container application, there were multiple containers, but they use RDS. They use the same exactly VPC structure that I have explained, same security constructs. So you can explain this project as your project. You can say, I worked on this for 3 months, 4 months kind of thing, because right now we are taking some shortcuts. The HTTPS that you mentioned, setting up of Jenkins and setting up of these tools, we are not doing that in a very secure way. So if you add those things, add code reviews by your team leads, and this is actually 3 to 4 months of project if you don't take all those shortcuts and all. So you can explain the same project. That's why I'm saying treat this as a project that you are actually working in some company. The only difference is you will probably have to, you don't have those like if you're working in a company ABC, uh, uh, you can project that you are actually trying to, you were actually setting up their DevOps and they're setting up this project for them. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And build, look for such projects online like other projects as well. Any such complex project which takes you to that next level, that takes you closer to the how things work in the industry.
Okay.
In this project, I could not bring Kubernetes and other constructs, because then it would have made it a very long sort of project. So in the next month project, I am working on documenting the requirements for a very secure uh, production level Kubernetes cluster in for a customer, and we will probably try to deploy the application onto that. So with that in mind, next month, and then I'm doing that batch slightly late, like right now we started 2:30. We'll try to do 5 p.m. India time. So a lot of people are asking that, can we do it late in the day, 5 p.m. sort of thing. People from US and Canada and other locations can also join. So with that in mind, the next month batch will be on different technologies, and also on will follow similar process, but it will be a different project, different timelines. But you understand, you can also look for such complex projects elsewhere. Look for uh, hackathons kind of events or all such opportunities where you can showcase your capabilities, and then use that knowledge to talk about in the interviews.
Okay. Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other question, guys, or anything else you want to bring?
So I have one question, Sanjeev. I mean, I'm really not sure how the part one and part two and part three will we generally integrate together, or will it run separately in the corporation?
It see, I published another video that people always ask, can you give me an end-to-end pipeline, end-to-end everything? So usually that is not the case. There is no such end-to-end thing unless your customer or your company is Google, Netflix, or Facebook kind of thing. They may have such end-to-end pipelines where you commit some code, the developer commits a code, and it goes to production, and it creates all the images and everything on the fly. That usually not the case. I have seen a lot of small pipelines being built. That's why I'm trying to bring that same experience. Your your frequency of an AMI being changed. Part one was building an AMI is very less, unless your company decides to use a different operating system or a different softwares on top of that. That's not going to happen, right? That's like the frequency of your AMI changing is less. Similarly, but the frequency of your application changing is pretty much there. Like it will change frequently every day and that sort of thing. The frequency of your deployment may be different from your how frequently your application is going to be built. So we have created 3 different pipelines for this. So your DevOps or cloud engineer can create an AMI, and unless that requirement changes, he will not touch that pipeline. Your developers can work on building the application, building the Docker file, building the application, adding additional pet clinic code to the application, adding additional RDS related changes that can go in parallel. But suppose that happens 24/7. Your teams work all over the world. They improve pet clinic. They can work all that 24/7. Your pipelines will run 24/7. But your deployment is once in a week, assuming. Then your third stage is something third phase pipeline. We will run once a week. Why it has to run every time, right? So with that in mind, usually there is no end-to-end pipeline. But if they ask you explain in the interview or in your job, wherever you are trying to apply, explain them that you are using small pipelines and this is how. If they ask, okay, which was the pipeline for production deployment, then the stage 3. Pipeline 2 is more of a developer experience where devs are using those pipelines for their code commit, pull request, review of the source code, checking the code quality and all. That is usually running all the time on every commit that's gonna build something. You have an AMI pipeline which will be updated less frequently.
Okay.
But like Sheen mentioned, right, he's creating it as a single pipeline as well.
Yeah.
So that also is a possibility. It's just that only very experienced, not the personal experience, the company experience. A company who requires you to build very frequently, deploy very frequently, they will use that end-to-end pipeline.
Okay.
Like this is a new feature. It has to go in production today. Let's then automate everything.
Okay, so after integrating everything with the main branch, then only it will go to the part 3 kind of servers, and then it will deploy in that EC2 instances using load balancers and other part, let's say Kubernetes and everything.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Sanjeev. That helps. Initially, I was an impression like, okay, so we need to deploy AMI image. Do we have to install in EC2 instance or where? I'm a little confused.
No. So what we will do is next phase 3, when we create the launch configuration of the instance, we will say use that AMI ID that we created in phase 1. Similarly, when we are pulling the Docker image, we'll say pull the Docker image created in phase 2. So that Docker image name and that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Sanjeev, Dinesh here. I think you pretty much answered what I wanted to ask the next question. See, we have built the AMI in the first phase. That's pretty clear. But let's say we are using that same AMI on part 3. Okay, we are using that particular AMI and we are using it for the instance in the Terraform. Let's say in the future, there is some change in the AMI. So this process is manual, where you build the first phase and take the EMI from there, or it should be automated as well?
Right now it's manual. We'll stick to that manual process. But you understand that if the company has maturity, they want this to be automated. It's doable, right? It's not that complex to integrate these pipelines. But in this case, just for the you can say simplicity and what I have seen from that organization, we use it manual. So when an AMI is changing, we will come and commit new AMI ID into this bucket, into this repository.
So is there any possibility that the AMI will be picked automatically? I mean, when we wanted to do that automation, it is possible?
Yeah, it is possible. You can tag that AMI with latest tag, just like Docker image, right? You can tag it, and you can pull it dynamically also, that use the latest one or use that. Those sort of things are also possible.
Things can be done. Okay, that's an interesting thing there. Okay, I'll try to do that. Thank you, Sanjay.
Yeah, we can explore that also, but it's not mandatory that we try to automate and have a very long running pipeline which will build AMI, build the Docker image, then deploy, create the EC2 instances. It will be a long running process, and usually their frequency of their execution is not one-to-one. Image will
I mean, based on the frequency, you decide.
Frequency is what you will integrate things. If something is running monthly, you will run that in a monthly pipeline, weekly and daily sort of thing.
Okay. Yes.
And sometimes the audience was also different. So in some companies, the AMI will be managed by, say, the cloud team specifically. Uh, so the roles and responsibilities can also be varying. It's not in every company. That's not the structure, right? That one engineer or one team will work on. AMI is different area, because in the AMI you will add a lot of other tools that organization needs, your antivirus stuff and logging stuff, which sometimes DevOps does not manage also. So in the company that I work, it was managed by one team, but also I have seen that cloud images are managed by a different team, and they use that. When there is a new image being published, they will be notified and they will update. That's why I want to keep them separate, even if there is a manual step involved, just so we understand that there could be frequency and then there could be roles and responsibilities of different teams. So uh, pipeline 1 is actually being built by a different team, and pipeline 2 and 3 are being built by different teams.
Mhm. So, Sanjay, when Shruti asked an interesting question, see, you said it's almost as a realistic project, what you find in the real time. But my question is, if you are an interviewer, let's say, I mean, if you are interviewing me, I will tell you the same thing. Yeah, we built a Packer image in the first part, second part, and third part, so on. But would you also ask us what kind of a project you did? Because we cannot say we used pet clinic project. This is a sample project.
Yeah, that's correct. That's where the story has to evolve. You have to talk about that it was a front end application. This was written in Java. This was used for some store location or something, some product scan. So that business, you have to mention it was a business application.
So if we say that it's an e-commerce project or something like that, so will the interviewer will check the, will
Most
check the
likely
genuinity?
not. Most
Okay.
likely not get so much into where it is hosted, show me the URL, that sort of thing they will not get into. But yeah, they could use other questions to grill you on or verify that your understanding is correct on some other through
Oh,
some other questions.
okay. So it's more into technical rather than checking
Yes,
whether you have
yes.
really done. Okay.
Yeah. You just assume that Pet Clinic is an application, business application used by one of few of your customers and that sort of thing. It could be internal application, it could be customer facing. That we are not differentiating here, right?
Yes.
So that's they won't go that into that pet clinic specific thing. You mentioned that it was a business application.
Okay. Cool.
Hello.
Yep.
I have a question regarding the branches. So, for the sake of conversation, let's say that we have 3 branches, one main and then 3 branches that we're working on, similar to what we have. So, branch 1, building the AMI, branch 2, creating Dockerized application, and branch 3 is creating the infrastructure for the application. So, when the guys on branch 1, let's say, for example, that they're building the AMI, branch 2 also has a copy of part of that code, right? Because it's part of the same repo. It's just different branch. Is what's happening when branch 1 team commit their data to the main once assuming that they're perfected the image, they commit it to main.
Mhm.
Once the other branches try to push, they will have an issue. Is that what's happening? They just pull and then they push their own code so that they're all keep in sync.
So in your case, how you have done is you are using the same repository for part 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, yeah,
My
just different branches.
They are different branches, but my suggestion was that because their frequency is different and on every commit, we want the repository to do that activity. So I actually wanted them to be 3 different repositories for multiple reasons.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
I think he got
I
it
misunderstood you then.
other way because he's taking every project into a different repository, every different branch. So basically, every
Yes.
part of the project should be in a different repository. So the parallel development can happen in the real time.
Exactly.
If the same person is
Got
working
it.
on building the Packer AMI, so multiple people can do that. So they will be pushing to the same repository, but not to the main branch in the same repository, but in the
Got it.
feature branch. Only
Got it.
whoever the particular assignee will assign, let's say, the Sanjeev is assigned, he will say, okay, LIMS Packer EMI is good. Only then that will be pushed to the next branch, could be integration branch or another branch. So every part of the project
Got
should
it.
be in a different repository with different branches.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Well, time to
And then
factor then.
Dinesh, yeah, you have to factor in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought you understand and you just doing it like just to want to use one repository, but the idea would be use three different repository. You are close to the industry, and also in your um, public repository, three projects will be visible. So that also was one of the reason we wanted to build three repositories.
Yes, it looks
Got it.
big.
Yeah.
Right, right. No worries, I'll fix that. Easy fix.
Yep.
So basically what happens in the real time is first you create the branches first, you based on the project, and all the branches are first layered and protected, and they will be giving the roles, who can read, who can write, who can merge. After that, the project is started.
What would be the scenario where the team's ready to merge domain?
I mean,
That's a very
yeah, please go ahead, Sanjay.
So that's very frequently, it happens very frequently. So for example, pet clinic, 10 developers are working, they will create their different branches, say branch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everybody will be working on a specific feature branch. And somebody may be creating two different branches as well if that person is working on two features, two issues to be resolved. And once they are fine in their specific branch, then the pipeline will give that the way we saw code quality checks and all that. A specific branch level analysis will be performed, and then he will create a sort of pull request, which the reviewer will review and perform. And with that, what happens is it will notify every 9 other developers that now they can't create a pull request into the main branch because main branch has been updated ever since their branches were created.
And
So
it's
they get
freezed.
pull. They get pull again.
Yeah, and they have to do a git pull and make sure that they merge with the main branch, and that's how the process will.
Got it. Oh, okay, that's nice.
That's why I'm saying just get used to just try to create those branches, make sure you're working, because in interview branching and merging is one of the question. Branching and merging is the question, and also it will be very easy for you to answer. If not the exact question that they are asking, but you can explain, this is how I worked. This is how we used to work. We used to create feature branches for every new feature that we are adding. We're creating a pull request, analysis happening on every branch, on your every individual branch, feature branch, as well as your master main repository that you have on that.
Who's doing the housekeeping on the branches on the main? Because the branches exist on the repo as well, right? So who actually sees that? Oh, this branch is complete, has been merged. Whose
So
usually job is that?
so that's a very dynamic thing. Like for example, usually we know that this is the go-to person for this specific branch, this specific repository. For example, AMI, usually there would be somebody who we would know that he usually creates the AMIs or works on that. So if I have been given a task to create new AMI, I will work in a feature branch and I will ask him to review that, and then he will push it. And then based on that, if notifications have to be sent or that sort of thing to the other people, that new image is ready and that should be used going forward. Usually the process pull request, this process will keep happening, and then there would be a code freeze date or something, and then around that time, one of the lead will look at that now we are approaching the code freeze timeline, so or we are going to make a release on this date. So based on that, they will stop merging additional changes since then, and it's usually a very collaborative thing. People in their stand-up will discuss who is working on what, and based on that, they will decide things.
So Sanjay, in your organizations, you're also using the same agile methodology. I
Yeah,
hope
yeah.
so. Yeah. So
Correct.
you also will be having same stand-up meetings, and I mean, you also decide before starting the project what kind of a framework we should use, like Scrum or Kanban, based on the project. You decide before.
No, it's usually these are long-running projects, and
Mhm.
Kanban or Scrum are decided much like before we start working on something, the entire project itself.
So you also create the epics, stories, and tasks,
Yeah, yeah,
and
correct.
who is doing what. Based on that, you assign the maintainers, developers, and all such activities, right? Permissions
Exactly.
and
Yes.
policies.
Correct. Correct. That's usually based on the company that we are working on in their agile maturity, and that helps define these processes.
Okay.
That's why you will see a lot of videos on day-to-day activities of a DevOps engineer or cloud engineer. It's not very, it cannot be defined.
It's not
What,
rigid. I mean, it can be anything.
yeah,
It
can be
will vary.
anything. Yeah. Usually what I have seen, or what I try to answer them is that, yes, I will spend first 30 minutes, 1 hour in the morning just to see uh, if overnight we had some deployment, or we have like say 200 servers being where application is running, any logs coming from there, any alerts in our dashboards, our logging system. And then we'll go for a stand up around say 9:30, 10, so we can discuss that overnight something went wrong, that server crashed, or there is not enough storage on that server, that has to be changed. Then that will decide your rest of the day, which is critical issue, how quickly something has to be worked on, if two people have to work on something. So first you go and monitor your stuff, go back to stand up, decide your
Put
day.
it in the
That's
backlog and get, yeah.
create tickets and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So that's how usually a day is, and very dynamic. If everything was stable yesterday, it would be a different day. If something crashed, something happened overnight, it auto recovered or not, um, that will decide your day rather than that it being a very standard day.
You should do
Sanjay,
one of those videos.
Sorry?
You should do one of those videos where it says life and day of a DevOps engineer.
Yeah.
It's not like just
so,
buying coffee, right?
Yeah.
Taking
so Sanjay, I think, it's, if it is not too much to ask, I have a question. I mean, in your organization, can you please, for any of your projects, can I know the average, kind of machines you have in the production? Like you have how big machines you have, like M12 large or something like that, and how many of them you
So,
have on an average?
so again, it's like a very, it's again company to company, it's different,
Generic.
environment to environment, and all. Yeah, it cannot be answered that this is what a company will have.
Okay, yeah, I
And
get it. I get it.
for a typical project, 10 to 15 servers is what you will see. 10, 15 servers where you have the application database, that sort of thing. And then a different project will have then additional servers. So in my company, we have around 250 instances that we manage right now. But then I have seen where we have in one of the project, we were setting up all these DevOps tools. So there we use very less number of servers, like one for Jenkins, or two for Jenkins in two different data centers, and uh, similarly one for JFrog, and just to set up the tools, and then the entire company will use those tools.
So usually the production infrastructure is quite high than the dev environment and all other environments,
Yeah,
right? So infrastructure changes based on the environment. What's happening?
Based on the environment, based on the scalability needs, we based on the monitoring feedback that we get, that number of connections, number of users are growing, number of instances have to be added.
Okay. All right.
That's why in the phase 3 we have very simple configuration. If you go to that phase 3, you will see that when we create those launch configurations and we attach that to a load balancer, we can very quickly scale that infrastructure that we will do. We just say instead of 2 servers, add another one, and automatically new server will be created.
Correct.
New Docker, it will pull the Docker image automatically and then start serving traffic.
It's a replica, right? Almost it's like a replica.
Correct. Correct. So it's very straightforward. So we get, it's very common also. We get information that number of connections are increasing on the server. The CPU is hitting 70%, 80%. We simply add another server.
Yes.
And we use small servers, like we don't go with massive servers unless it's required.
Okay.
And we do a lot of analysis, like which should be the, should it be M1 memory optimized or compute optimized based on the application. If the application is requires more of compute than memory, then we go for compute optimized machines. If your process running requires a lot of memory, then we go for memory optimized servers and less CPUs. And if that is not, the detail is not available, then we go for a burstable instance and small instance. So we can add whenever required, we can keep adding those small machines.
So Sanjeev, in part 3, we are doing this auto scaling configuration, launch configurations also. But for the CI tool, also in the real time, it is scaled. I mean, because the Jenkins has to be scaled, if I'm not wrong, is it?
So we will not go to that area of the project. We will assume that Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub is scalable and it's available to us.
Okay, we'll focus on only the deployment.
Yeah, we'll focus on the deployment side of it. But yeah, those tools, that's why I said we took a lot of shortcuts. So we can always say that this project was actually 3-4 months. We had to set up all these tools in a scalable way and all that. We can explain that part as well. But for this simplicity, for this project, we want the application deployment process to be followed. And then obviously there will be effort going into managing GitLab, managing your CI machines, your source code. Not everybody uses the cloud hosted GitLab, right? People host their own GitLab, their own Jenkins, their own GitHub.
Yes. Thank you.
In one of the project, we actually, that's why I was mentioning, we were only managing these tools. We were not building the pipelines also. Our job was to manage these because that was not in the cloud, that was on the on-premise. So setting up CloudBees, Jenkins, JFrog, you are using a cloud version of JFrog. We were using a installed version of the, so install JFrog and all that different tools and make sure that they are running fine. And then different application teams. So say there's a pet clinic team, they will have their own DevOps engineer who will do the pipeline. We will not do that. So that also is a model where people work on setting up the DevOps tools, but that's only in very large banks and that sort of thing. Otherwise, startups and all other companies are moving to SaaS versions.
So whatever you said is that itself becomes a DevOps engineer job.
Yes,
in large company.
Correct.
Cool. The session was interesting, Sanjeev. Thank you so much. You've answered almost most of the questions.
Yeah, no worries. So we will have more such meetings. I think we will have at least two more sessions. We will have next week. And I don't think by next week you will be able to do part 3. It will not be possible. It's a big area. You take help, even if you take help from ChatGPT or any other thing, it will still take time. So just focus on that. It will need a lot of dedication to finish that. But yeah, the week after, I think you should be close to achieving that. So Next week we'll have a similar session, but no, maybe not demos, but more of question answer where we are, a checkpoint kind of thing. And then the subsequent week we'll have a longer discussion where we will try to summarize what we have learned, what benefits this solution has brought in, all the scalability, security, and all points that we want to discuss. So we'll bring that, and you then go back and think how you can build a story around it. Say that how a business application was built and deployed and AMIs were created, and create a story around it, and just rock in the interviews. All right, guys, it's been what, 1 hour 40 minutes, I think.
It's been nice, guys.
Yeah, it has been very good experience for me also, learning and explaining it to you guys. I am also getting very sort of talking and explaining, getting that experience. So it will help me as well, not just you guys. So I hope it will add a lot of value to you as well in parallel.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
And just, I think someone has requested for repositories. If once you split your repositories, maybe you can send the links. Dinesh, Shruti, Karthik, whoever did the demo, you guys post your repositories as well. I think group is open for posting, so you guys can just post that.
What do you
But
mean?
whoever
What do
has
you mean
done
publish
it,
repository?
like just make the public URL of the repository, you paste the URL in the WhatsApp group. So I think people are requesting for that.
I may need to make that public because it's a private repo.
Make it public. Add it in your Git, in your resume also. Keep it public. That would help in future. That okay, in 2023 you were active on GitHub or GitLab, and that's how you committed a lot of source code. It helps. Some companies prefer people with hands-on experience, or most of them would prefer.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, then I'll close the call and then we will reconnect next week. And apologies, I had to do it on Monday. The next one will be on Saturday, and the subsequent one will also be on a weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.